I'll play back the levels the way you said them.
Say it on me.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
Lead.
I back.
People are always saying about the talk, and I talk, and I talk, and I talk, but guess fucking what? I back it up. I back it up.
That means it's time to roll, baby.
You've got nothing going on between your ears, buddy.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
I think I could beat every girl in my division with one hand.
That guy's such a dick. I mean, you show your true colors after a fight. And that fucking guy comes up to me. You know where you are, huh?
I don't have much left to say other than you have seen nothing yet.
Hope to God you come ready.
I'm Michael Morgan and welcome to this week's edition of the WHOACAST, the final edition of 2019, the final edition of this decade. Now you can probably hear the waves splashing, crashing in the background. Our intrepid and roving reporter, stroke media personality, stroke media magnet is G from WOTV, reporting from Thailand, no less.
Yes, reporting live from, you know me and not being able to pronounce anything that's not American. I'm at a beach called Nahe, something like that, and it's beautiful. So the viewers, our listeners, excuse me, can hear the waves breaking, and I'm burning up on the beach having a good time.
So I've been peeping your Facebook, and I've been, catching obviously up with you on Twitter. What's going down over there? It looks like you're doing a bit of training as well.
Yes, so my schedule is pretty much training in the morning, like private Muay Thai lessons, and then I'll sneak in a group lesson or two once I get a little bit better. And then, but yeah, pretty much I'm at Ratachi Gym in Phuket, Thailand, and I'm fighting. I'm, doing pad work and working with an instructor. And then once that's all said and done, I take a shower and I hit the streets and be a tourist. So it's a pretty cool holiday, as you would say.
Wow. How hard is it, or how hard was it to actually unlearn some of the bad habits which, does creep in, and some of the things which, aren't actually 100% bona fide, because you're in the heartland, as it were, for Muay Thai. I mean, how difficult was it actually, adapting to what effectively is a new regime, a new style?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I showed up with mistakes that I've been making in my own training or what I've learned on my own. Yeah. So he's basically cleaning up my kicks. But I will say that the instructor is happy that I do have somewhat of a background in it. I'm not from, starting from jump, and he's just cleaning things up. So he's happy to work with me. But secondly, it's really hard to work out in such humid and outdoor conditions when you're just used to the gym and air we're spoiled as Americans. Out here, there's heavy bags and you're outside. It's humid as hell, and you're hitting the pad. I wanted to throw up, but I'm having a ball, believe it or not. Nice.
Well, is there going to be anybody left to actually host the WHOACAST? Got you over there hitting pads with Muay Thai aficionados, Muay Thai professionals. Got me over here getting pummeled to death, or half to death, by Jimmy Manua. I mean, I think we might have to have some stunt doubles or stand-ins.
Right? You know what I mean? Sometimes I wish there was a clone of me, because between the traveling, the podcast, and being a student and work, I'm exhausted. But Mike, seriously, you only have one life to live, so I might as well make my dreams come true. And this is like a dream trip. I've always wanted to go to Thailand and have an instructor just fix and tweak all these little mistakes, like you're not turning your hip, you're not, getting your balance back after you throw a kick. It's just so nice to have somebody just clean all that up, and I can take it to the States and practice,
Nice. Well, maybe, we might get our own little fight club on, considering, as I say, you're out there getting to grips with the rudiments of Muay Thai. And like I say, Jimmy Manu is happy to continue schooling me. As I'm not sure if you saw the video which went up. It was like a clip of what's actually coming out on Christmas Day. But he was merciless in actually taking me through my paces. Plus, he was, I would say gracious in letting me know how I can escape some of his lethal clutches.
Oh yeah, well you needed some of that, Mikey. Sometimes, every so often, we need to be beat up. You know what I mean? Get humbled, fix our little training mistakes, and get our old asses out there in the gym. I was so out of breath too. I was just like, hey, can I just get some water? Can I get some water?
Wow.
But as each day goes by, I'll probably get better and better, and my cardio will go up. So, and there's no quitting me. I might have needed some water breaks, but I don't quit,
Nice. Well, cracking on with this, as I mentioned, the last episode of the decade, the last episode of 2019. Let's have a quick canter through, the main talking points of UFC Busan, which actually took place over the weekend. And I think it's only right, considering we are closing out the decade, to have a look, have a listen to some of our highlights, standout moments. Not just you, but as well as myself, but also Kairos as well. And possibly, take a quick canter through some of the highlights of this year. But kicking off with the UFC's action over the weekend just gone. UFC Busan, I have to say, didn't turn out too badly. There were some highlights on it. For me, in particular, I did enjoy Rakic taking on Oezdemir, and I've got to admit, I was very surprised with that outcome. I did see, considering the tear that Rakic had been on, and considering that, to a certain extent, Oezdemir had his roll slowed ever so slightly. I was very surprised by that outcome, but I was also surprised by the lethal kicks that Oezdemir was handing out, because it looked as though, Rakic had actually grown another knee.
Oh my God, it's so funny you say that, because I did see footage. I saw more footage of his third knee than I did of the actual fight. It was horrendous. Yeah. Jeez, he's not walking either for a couple of days on that knee, buddy. No way.
Oh, definitely.
But I mean, that's a good move to do, though. What we talked about this, on previous episodes, you take out somebody's leg, you mess up their whole game plan. So it's a good way to kind of get somebody off their game, is to take out their legs. So it's a pretty good move on Ozdemir's part. Yeah, especially, a young lion like Rakic, you definitely got to take him out some way, somehow. And to target the leg was pretty smart.
Oh, 100%. I mean, just whilst we're on Oezdemir and Rakic, what do you reckon is next for Oezdemir?
I didn't really like his call-outs of trying to get rematches and whatnot. I think he still needs to... I wasn't too keen on that. I think he's right up there with, like, Corey Anderson and Jan... I can't stand it. Tell me his last name again.
Jan Blachowicz.
Jan Blachowicz. I think maybe the winner between them. But I'm definitely not keen on him getting his rematches back. Dominic Reyes is fighting for the title, so we can scratch that. And... Anthony Smith, I think it goes the same way. So, and it's not really anything that, like, gets me going. I just think he needs to keep making his way up the ladder so eventually he can fight for a title again, because he's definitely somebody that is improving with each fight. What do you think?
Well, I was, to be honest with you, I'm exactly of the same opinion. I really do feel, he needs to continue the momentum. He needs to actually keep the upward trajectory. And I'm not 100 miles away from, what you suggested there. But you know what? I'm more interested in seeing what's next for Rakic, to be honest with you, because he is devastating when it actually comes to performance. I mean, don't get me wrong. For me, from where I was sat, that was a very close run thing. But I'd really like to see him take on Johnny Walker. I'd like to see Rakic and Johnny Walker in the cage.
Oh, that would be nice. And I would put my money on Rakic. I think he knocks his head off, especially since Corey Anderson has exposed that Johnny Walker has a small issue with right hands. I'm not saying, he's been figured out. I'm just saying he's got a very... What's the word I want to say? It's a very obvious hole in his defense, and that's why Corey was able just to beat him up across that octagon like that. So I think with a flaw like that and such a tremendous striker like Rake, he's going to knock his head off. So Mike, I saw online a lot of controversy about Oezdemir being the winner. Do you think he was the winner? Do you think it was a robbery, close fight? Like, what are your thoughts? Because I'm seeing a lot of,
Definitely not a robbery. I mean, like I alluded to earlier, it was a very, very close run thing. Both men gave a fantastic account of each other. And, you have to look at it like this. In terms of the striking battle, neither of them were relenting. And I really do feel as though, perhaps, just for my own education, I think, I want to get a bit more... Especially in 2020, I want to get a bit more to grips with judging criteria, because it always does baffle me when it does come to a close run thing, how it is that they actually discern who the winner is. I mean, what criteria are they, in terms of weight, are they putting more towards, especially now at this stage of the game? And in 2020, like I say, I think things have moved on and evolved, and I just want to get a better appreciation, because I never can be in a situation where I can unequivocally say this person definitely won, especially when it's such a close run thing. But no, just to answer your question, I don't think it was a robbery. It was extremely close from where I was sitting.
And I'm not surprised. They're very it was evenly matched. There was nobody could really call it. You know what I mean? With their impressive records, they're both very good strikers. Ozdemir has made such improvements in this game. He used to just come barreling forward and just drop everybody, like, you know, the way he had knocked out Jimmy Manawan and a couple of other folks, and now he's really patient, picking his strikes, also throwing in a little wrestling, a little grappling, and it's nice to see him kind of like switch things up rather than come forward and come barreling at you. And I think he's going to improve every fight, but I just don't want to see the rematches that he wants. You know, he wants to run back. No.
Yeah. You know, this whole no time moniker, I'm glad he's kind of like ditched that, because that's quite, dare I say, a reckless approach. You're right, he has kind of like pared it back ever so slightly. There's a more methodical, more discerning and more intelligent approach to his fights now, and that's quite refreshing to see. But, you know, I think occasionally, just to mix it up, I certainly would like to see the return of no time.
Absolutely. I think that loss to DC kind of really set that his path in motion as far as being more tactical and patient and whatnot. I think sometimes when you fight for a title and you really think you're the best guy out there and you get mopped up, you really have to revamp and change things, and I think that's what we're seeing. So I still want him to take his time with challengers and make his way eventually back up and, you know, fight John Jones. I would like to see that, but let's give him a couple more fights.
No, definitely. You know? And talking about, you know, paths in motion following losses, Frankie Edgar versus the Korean Zombie. What a one-round war. Man, that was incredible. I take it you saw the highlights, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I saw the highlights, read a couple articles, and I mean, I didn't really miss much because Frankie went down in the first round. And what I did see was that Korean Zombie was just having his way with him, and exactly in the way in which you and I described. Yeah. And I think we discussed this last, episode, or maybe amongst ourselves, I can't even remember. But if you keep Frankie at the end of your punches and let him come in and you just counter the hell out of him, that's it. That's how you win. And that's what happened. Ortega did it with that uppercut. And then you see Korean Zombie perfectly. As soon as Frankie comes in, pop, pop, pop. Couple uppercuts, couple right hands, couple lefts, and then that's it. But the only thing that I will say is that Frankie just can't take a shot anymore. This is definitely not the Frankie that got pummeled by Gray Maynard, did 5 flips, came back and won the fight.
Well, when you think about it
definitely
like this,
not the same guy.
When you think about it like this, he's coming down in weight. And I always put a lot of store by this. Your brain is actually going to be propped up by water. You're actually depleting your body of water. What do you expect? And plus, I mean, we're talking about the Korean Zombie. This come forward style, the come forward approach, the relentless pace that he puts on. There's no way that Frankie Edgar wasn't going out.
Oh, absolutely. And I also, we also discussed this before, and I've said it on Twitter. His boxing is getting crispier and crispier. When we first started to notice him in the WEC and all his other fights, he was a brawler. Just a straight brawler. You can't call him that now. You cannot call Korean Zombie a brawler. Not after that destruction of Mokano. Not after what you saw with Frankie Edgar. I mean, these are wonderful, strikes. Just fundamentally and just technically beautiful boxing. And we didn't always see that from him. So, like I was just saying about Ozdemir, Korean Zombie, believe it or not, is getting better and better. And Frankie is on the decline. But I will say this, Mike, I'm a little kind of confused as to why Frankie took that fight in the first place, knowing he has another one coming up with Corey Sandhagen. And it really does a disservice to the fans that bought tickets for that fight because it was a main event. And I highly doubt he's going to fight Corey Sandhagen after this.
Bit of an odd narrative to sell after that loss. And plus, I mean, I can answer that. I reckon he took the fight because he's expressed in the past, look, I'm a fighter, I fight. Now, when you look at it, he's as game as the next guy. So I have to say, I do agree that him coming in on late notice was a brilliant idea. I can't think of, off the top of my head, another fighter who would have been an easy person to slot in, considering the style. Styles make fights. I know it's an old cliche, but the style that was on display there, it was incredible seeing that. But you're right, Sandhagen, I can't see how you actually sell that. I can't see that actually taking place. And I'm not sure, but I've not actually read it, but I saw something out there in which I thought Frank Edgar gave a statement. Now, I wasn't sure whether it was leaning towards, you know, taking a bit of time off, or basically taking stock of whether the move down was a good idea. But I'm not sure if you saw any of that.
Yeah, I didn't see much of it, especially since, you know, I've been traveling for the past few days. I've only caught a few things, but I mean, like me and you always talk about, we can't tell fighters when to retire.
Yeah.
You know, Frankie seems to be in good health. He's just slightly declining, a little slower, been figured out, and getting older. So he's got to adjust to his age. And you've seen fighters adjust to their age and still be successful. Look at Jose Aldo. No more leg kicks, but he's fighting quite well. Because he's fighting well at his age, he's adjusted. And I think Frankie's going to have to make those types of changes. Like, all right, I'm a older fighter now, I'm slowing down, what can I do to keep getting these wins under my belt as an older fighter? I don't necessarily think he needs to, like, retire. He just needs to adjust to what's not really clicking anymore. That's it. And I think he's the type of guy to do that, because he's determined, and he's not washed up yet. I refuse to believe that, but let him be a gatekeeper of some sort. He does not need to be trying to fight for the title right now, and let him go on vacation and rest up, you know?
You're right. We have this constant dialogue on, you know, not being in a position, never should we be in a position to actually advise a fighter when to quit. So I really do feel you're right. He does need to take stock, maybe take some time away and actually contemplate exactly where he goes next. But segueing neatly then into our first foray into what actually happened, what transpired in the last decade, which made us say, whoa. I think it's time for Kairos' Corner.
What is going on, everybody? I am Kairos. Let's talk about my 3 whoa moments of the decade. Starting off with number 1, we got Quentin Rampage Jackson signing with Bellator in 2013. And before you guys give me some crap about this, hear me out. Rampage opened up the door for a lot of prominent fighters, not just in the UFC, but other organizations to test free agency and look for competing deals. Who followed suit after Rampage signed to Bellator? Guys of the likes of Rory McDonald, Ryan Bader, Matt Mitrione, and the list goes on, Paul Daly. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Bellator stole so much talent and cultivated such a great roster that they are putting on amazing fight cards, amazing fights. And do not get it twisted. Bellator is also taking and honing their own crop of talent, and they're gonna have an exciting 2021. Guys the likes of AJ McKee, Douglas Lima, etc. Be ready, because Bellator is coming with a vengeance. Coming in next at number 2 is UFC 157 in 2013, Ronda Rousey versus Liz Carmouche. And before you guys hit me with, but Kairos, Ronda Rousey's a bad person, I don't like her. You don't have to like her, but you better respect her legacy and accomplishments. This woman brought women's mixed martial arts to the forefront, the mainstream of MMA. It headlined the event. They broke records for what they did. You guys don't understand, not you guys, to you people who are apprehensive about this, you don't understand the magnitude of what she accomplished. There are so many stars now benefiting for what she did, not just in MMA, but in other sports and in cinema and in other things. She has trailblazed an entire generation of culture, art, and women's empowerment. And if you don't like it, that's okay. It's your right to choose what you like and do not like. But I'm just stating my opinion and my list. And last but certainly not least, we have UFC 205. Yes, very recent. Why am I talking about this? Because MMA was illegal in New York for decades. It was a product of shady politics, and the man responsible is now sitting in prison. I won't even utter his name because he's irrelevant. Why is this so monumental? The Garden had never been sold out to the degree that it was in this event, and it proved that MMA could be sustainable. There were people coming up and talking to me about this event who don't even watch mixed martial arts, saying, Kairos, I did not know this sport was so great. Oh my gosh, why didn't you talk about it? They talked about all 3 of the title fights, which I believe was Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. You had Tyron Woodley versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and I believe Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Karolina Kovacevic. Don't quote me on that. But ultimately, it led up to me finding a newfound passion for MMA and even beginning to talk about it, starting my YouTube channel, starting my Twitter. You know, this event changed my entire outlook and trajectory, and I'm forever grateful for it. Anyway, those are my top 3 whoa moments. Tell me what you guys are. Thank you all so much for this opportunity as well. I am so grateful for it. Have an excellent 2021. Have an excellent rest of your 2020. I'm Kairos. Have a great day.
Well, I got to agree with Kairos, and, you know, no other figure in terms of impact, in terms of influence, and in terms of life-changing opportunities, has actually come on the scene as big as Ronda Rousey when it comes to women's mixed martial arts. Not only did she, change Dana White's mind, she actually put on a dazzling display, especially, in the early forays of mixed martial arts prowess, but as well as that, established the brand, I feel, of women's mixed martial arts.
Oh yeah, I mean, Kairos hit it on the head, meaning like whether you like her or not, she did her thing for MMA. Okay, she put women's MMA on the map. She had someone like Dana White who said women will never fight in the UFC. She changed his mind, and then not only did she change his mind, he went all out for women's MMA and continues to do so. And if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be experiencing Irene Aldana knocking someone out like that. We wouldn't be seeing Amanda Nunes becoming the GOAT. And Kairos is absolutely right. I'm one of those people that doesn't care for Ronda Rousey, but at the same time, I respect the hell out of her for what she did for the business. You just can't,
Oh, 100%. I think, it'd be remiss of us not to actually touch on ours. Now, one of the ones I wanted to lead with, it made me say whoa because, one, it was unexpected. It made me say whoa because it came from left field. It made me say whoa because never in a million years could I imagine Dana White having anything positive to say about this organization. But it was when the UFC bought Strikeforce. That for me was a real pivotal moment, a seminal moment, a turning point in mixed martial arts, because then when you think about it, the then number 2 was actually consumed by the worldwide leader and ranked number 1 mixed martial arts organization, and actually bought out Strikeforce. That for me, as I say, was a very, very surprising time because of the fact that, up until then, Dana White had been calling Strikeforce the Bush League when it came to mixed martial arts. Plus, this ongoing feud, or the then ongoing feud between him and Scott Coker, I couldn't see both men actually sitting around a business table and actually thrashing out a deal.
Wow. I mean, how could we forget? This was a huge move for the UFC to absorb this. You know what I mean? And I will be honest here, Michael, I don't like change. So Dana White can call Strikeforce and, other organizations B-level, but I kind of liked having B-levels because when the UFC was having an off night or they weren't showing any fights, I hopped on Strikeforce. And how could you not like Strikeforce? I mean, Mike, how can you not forget the Scrap Pack? The Scrap Pack acting a fool and attacking Jason Ham Miller the first time they ever get to go on TV.
Exactly.
On CBS. How could you not forget the melee? The wars with Josh Thompson and Gilbert Melendez. Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate having their first battle, which that fight was actually my favorite one out of both their battles.
Yeah.
That one, it was a back and forth, beautiful grappling exchange. It was no joke.
And how could you forget?
I mean, how could...
For me, one of the seminal moments in Strikeforce was Daly versus Diaz. That was an incredible fight. Now, not only did they give us all of those seminal moments, but I personally don't believe that they were the B-League. I personally feel that they were giving the UFC a run for their money. And in terms of talent, you don't then turn around after calling them the B-League and then acquire them if you don't secretly, deep down inside, respect the hell out of what they brought to the table.
And that's what I was just about to say. He was calling them the B-Leagues, but you saw that he had to buy the B-Leagues real quick to get them to just stop with their momentum that they had, because I had no complaints at Strikeforce whatsoever. You know what I mean? So, and people... There was like a little Strikeforce following. The fact that it was able to be aired on CBS says something, and it was very smart of Dana to absorb it, because at first I don't like change, and I didn't like it because I wanted like my UFC nights, and some nights I wanted to watch Strikeforce. But when they were absorbed and I saw the beautiful, matchups, for instance, Diego Sanchez versus Gilbert Melendez, amazing. Let's not forget Masvidal was also a Strikeforce fighter.
True.
And now I'm watching him fight Al Iaquinta, and I've been a Masvidal fan since day one. So to see him now fighting UFC folks was just like, this is awesome. I completely changed my mind on being a brat about, wanting two separate organizations. But now that it's been absorbed, I'm up. Daniel Cormier, undefeated in Strikeforce and was a phenom then and still is now, There's just, we could go back and forth. Let's not forget Fedor. Remember the whole controversy, is Fedor going to sign with the UFC or Strikeforce?
Yeah.
And he showed up at Strikeforce. We were shocked. I couldn't believe it when Dana could not retain him for the UFC. And he was like, "No, I'll go to Strikeforce." And I was like, holy shit. You know? It was a great but surprising moment.
Yeah.
For mixed martial arts, but it panned out beautifully, because now look.
Oh, 100%. I mean, as I say, that was my start for 10 in terms of moments and items and, you know, elements in MMA history that made me say whoa. But over to you.
Well, I've got a moment for you, Mike, and it kind of relates to this one. I think Holly Holm knocking out Ronda Rousey was one of the biggest moments for me in the decade. That knockout had me screaming at the top of my lungs, running around a couch in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, like a maniac, because I was one of those people that, although I disliked Ronda, I just knew she was going to win.
Yeah.
She had me as a believer. I thought she was going to get Holly Holm in the clinch, take her down, and do what she do, which is take people's arms home. And instead, I saw Holly Holm not only kick her in the face for the win, but she embarrassed her. I mean, the amount of time she slipped her and kept it moving, and Ronda was still facing the cage, and Holly was on the other side, was just astounding. Like, it kind of exposed Ronda as far as, like, you're not as elite as you think you are. Like, you still need to work on footwork and boxing, although you are a great fighter. But it showed that she had some work to do. Like, that head movement shit is real. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
So I think that's a huge moment in MMA. Huge.
Now, I just wanted to grab the reins again. I know we're not playing top trumps, but I think from a UK perspective, a lot of people look to Michael Bisping as the poster boy, as it were, for UK mixed martial artists. And, you know, whilst he has done incredible, he's brought incredible attributes to the table, I really do feel the person who's not getting enough mention from where I'm sat and from where I'm sitting is Jimmy Manuwa. You've got to think about it like this. He came to the game late. Now, whilst he has retired, I think that was one of those moments that made me say, whoa, him being signed to the UFC. I tell you why. He turned down the UFC twice. A lot of people, they grab the UFC.
Really?
Yeah, they grab the UFC with both hands as soon as they're offered it. He was offered it twice, and he said, no, I'm not ready. He honed his skills on the local circuit, UCMMA, Ultimate Challenge Mixed Martial Arts, on the local circuit in East London for a few years before transitioning into BAMMA. Now, from BAMMA, he then was signed to the UFC. But my point is this: for someone who's picked this up late in the game, he has gone leaps and bounds, because, you know, let's not forget, he was a title holder, an unbeaten title holder, as it were, before he actually came to the UFC. But this is somebody who picked his moment before he actually signed on the dotted line. You know, going in there against, you know, this was his first bout in the UFC, going in there against someone like a killer, someone with a reputation like Carl Kingsbury, was no joke. And to smoke him in the way that he did, I mean, he took some punishment. It was commendable, the amount of damage that he took. And there's a little funny story about that. After, you know, spending, what was it, 2.5, was it 3 rounds, actually cracking him relentlessly in the face, you know, to the extent where he broke Carl Kingsbury's orbital bone. He actually, he met him on the train back to London the very next day after the fight had finished, which was a little bit of an awkward encounter, let's just say that.
I'm sure. Oh, wow. That's very interesting. I never knew that about him. You know, I'm a typical States fan. When he showed up on the scene in the UFC, that's where my interest in him began. So that's pretty cool to hear all that stuff about him prior to. And I also like when fighters are like, no, I'm not ready. The UFC is the best league in the, you know, it's the best organization. It has the best mixed martial artists, and I am not ready. And that is, you know who else is like that?
Who's that?
Israel Adesanya. There's a reason why, you know, he's the champion, and his reign in the UFC hasn't been that long, and he hasn't even been in the UFC that long, because I believe his kickboxing record is 74-5. So he showed up to the UFC with plenty of kickboxing experience, and prior to coming to the UFC, he trained in wrestling and takedown defense and grappling. So I like when fighters are like that. You know, they're like, no, I'm not ready. Let me keep working on the regional circuit, and let me get better and better so that I can really showcase my skills and just be a factor, maybe be a future title contender. And I think that's really smart.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly.
So that is a pleasure to hear.
And some of these names might not actually mean anything to you, but before joining the UFC, you know, he was taking out people like Jamie Hearn, a seasoned boxer who'd actually, you know, transitioned into mixed martial arts. He took out Luke Blythe. Again, you know, I think a lot of people don't know these names, but Valentino Petrescu, who you may remember was on the Tough series, but he took him out in devastating fashion. We're talking about KOs here. So, you know, for him to actually go into the UFC, take out Kyle Kingsbury, take out Cyril Diabate, take out Ryan Jimmo, you know, take out Jan Blachowicz. So let's not, you know, forget he's got a win over him. Ovince St. Preux knocked him out. Corey Anderson knocked him out. Do you know what I mean? He's got some real feathers to stick in his cap by way of the fact that he came to this late in the game, but he's made a big impression.
Yeah. He has something a lot of fighters don't have, and it's just natural, raw power in his hands.
Yeah, you're right.
That's it.
You're right. And like I say,
you know, it's just something that you can't train for. It's just something that's in you. You put all the mechanics together, you sit down on your punches, and people are literally going to bed. And that's what Jimmy has, you know?
Exactly. And we talk more about this, actually, in an extended interview, which airs on Christmas Day, 25th of December, 3 p.m. GMT. But it's a real in-depth look at where Jimmy's at in terms of his mind state now. You might remember recently he tweeted that, you know, he was looking to get back to work, and he covers all this and more. I'm not going to say too much because I want people obviously to tune
don't
in,
say too much. Yeah,
make sure if you're listening to this, you actually log on to WHOATV.com on the 25th December and check out what Jimmy has to say. But no, back to you, your moment of the decade.
Yeah, sorry, it's a little loud over here, Mike, as you can hear.
That's okay.
Lots of families and stuff, so excuse the talking. Did you just ask me for another moment for me?
Yeah, let's have one more. One more. From
no
both of
problem.
us.
No problem. I can answer that question. A big moment for me is just Conor McGregor being in the UFC. I mean, I will admit that right now I've grown to somewhat dislike him because of his antics outside of the cage and his long layoffs and not defending the belt. However, you cannot take away what he did for this sport. You can't take away how each and every one of us, whether you're a hardcore fan, a casual, or someone who is new to this sport and only know of him, how we all fell in love with him. Like, period. I mean, he went from just newcoming, brash-talking prospect to just somebody that came, backed his shit up, entertained us, he made us laugh, and then he did things that were unimaginable. Who the hell knocks out Jose Aldo in 13 damn seconds?
Exactly.
Oh my God. And then I love that he took that and he ran with it. And, you know, and he hasn't stopped since. I mean, he's definitely hit the pause button, hasn't defended the belt, but what he has done for MMA has been something that we've never seen in WEC, MMA, UFC. We've never seen someone like this before, and I'm unsure if we ever will. So I do appreciate what he brought to the sport, and I love the way he entertained me when he was on top of things. And believe it or not, I hate to say it, I look forward to his return to see exactly where he's at when he fights Cowboy. So the saga continues, Mike.
I mean,
what are your thoughts?
I think you know, you took the word right out of my mouth in terms of what I was going to mention as my closing. I know there's so many that we could actually talk about, and I want, you know, people listening to this to interact with us on Twitter and give us your moment of the decade. But you're exactly right when you say that he's made significant waves, and you know, I would say in terms of progress and prowess and what he has done, not just for himself but for other people in the sport, because of his brash nature and demanding nature and just asking for things and ensuring that he gets it. We have to remember he also changed the game in terms of how fighters are actually respected by promotions as well. But let's also look at, you know, the people who actually took out, where people were saying that, oh, he's only a stand-up fighter, he won't be able to actually contend with a wrestler. He took Chad Mendes to school. Remember that. Let's just remember that.
Yeah.
Plus, at the time,
that's another moment.
Yeah, exactly. At the time, a shooting star, someone who was on a stellar rise, Dustin Poirier, took him to school, destroyed him. Let's not forget that.
He made No, because, Mike, what he did was he took people that are really good at fighting and made them look almost minuscule or silly. Like, he knocked out Aldo in 13 seconds. Right, there you go. That's the word. Ordinary. Perfect word. Thank you, Michael. He made Dustin Poirier look ordinary, and he was on somewhat of a tear at the time, you know. And every fight that Conor had, I doubted him. I was like, oh, he hasn't been tested in wrestling yet. He's known as a striker. Chad, even on a short camp, will take him out. And in the beginning, I was like, look, I told you. Then what happens? That left hand, it's too heavy. Chad didn't have the gas tank, took him right out. Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. And then let's not forget the way in which he dismantled Eddie Alvarez looked like something out of a movie or a video game. I even had trouble, just not that I lost respect for Eddie, but I just, every time I saw him on TV, I was just like, man, Conor killed you. Like, it took me a while to kind of get over the PTSD of him getting just beat up like that. And Eddie Alvarez is a dog. You know what I mean? Like, that's not somebody that gets beat up like that. That's somebody that if you beat him, you better fight to the death. How many wars have we seen Eddie Alvarez and then Conor showed up and just kind of like lightning fast just pummeled him and that was it, hands behind his back, and then took his belt? I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was just such an enjoyable time in MMA when he was on top of the game. I can't front.
And not only that, let's not leave out Nate Diaz. Whilst he fought him twice, you know, he has a win now over Nate Diaz, and he is a formidable, rough, rugged, and durable fighter who, you know, he took to a majority decision. So let's not forget that as well.
Because I think that's what we like about Conor, is that he has, like, he's like a package, man. Like, he has this phenomenal personality. He talks a lot of shit, and we all love that. We all love somebody that talks shit. And then what does he do? He backs it up. Whether we believe him or not, he's like, I'm going to make Jose Aldo look just silly out there. And that's what he did. And after a while, you're like, you know, this Mystic Mac name suits you. But all he was doing was teaching us about, like, the laws of attraction. All you got to do is believe in yourself and work hard, and you can make things happen too. And I think that's why a lot of people, it resonated with them. And then let's not forget the whole Ireland angle of it. He's putting European MMA on the map. He put a whole country on his back. Have you seen the fans when he fights? Do you see how Ireland, the flights and people coming from all across the country to come see him with their flags?
I would say that was my most memorable moment ever. And you know, I know we can sit here all day and talk about some of the moments in MMA, but particularly this decade, that was one of them. I mean, sitting there cage side and listening to that crowd, the deafening crowd in Dublin, Ireland, when he had his coming out party against Diego Brandao, was a moment I will never ever forget. Forget just talking about mixed martial arts.
And listen to what you said, Diego Brandao. Right, and early in his career, Mike. Like, let's not forget that this wasn't like his first title defense. That wasn't, that moment you're describing, I believe was a preliminary fight. Don't hold me to it, but it was very early in Conor's career. And look at what you remember from this.
No, that was the main.
One of his very first fights.
Diego Brandao versus Conor McGregor was the main event at UFC Dublin. Yeah.
Oh, it was the main event. Excuse me, but I just remember it being so early in his career, and yet he still had that type of fan base.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unbelievable. Even talking about him makes me miss that era. And it's, I think too, Mike, not to bring down the mood, but I think that's why people like me and especially women MMA fans or fans that are just disheartened with his behavior, I think this is why we're so heartbroken, because he made us so happy at one point.
Yeah.
So we're just, hopefully he recaptures us again when he goes back in there and possibly wins and makes us laugh. So hopefully, he can bring back some of that charisma and his winning ways and win us over again. But even just talking to you now, it's like I missed this about MMA. He brought such excitement.
No, you're absolutely right. Before we wrap up this episode, I wouldn't mind touching on an award ceremony which we're going to be holding in 2020. Basically, it's looking back over 2019 and giving the WHOACAST Award for the winners, the runners and riders. Now, it'll be on the judging panel. It'll be myself, yourself, Kairos and Chizanga Malata. But I wouldn't mind, just touching on just possibly one moment in 2019 that made you say, whoa.
Can we also incorporate maybe MMA Twitter and some podcasts that we, I listen to, because I definitely listen to a lot of MMA Twitter podcasts, and shout out to all of you. They're pretty dope.
100%. But do you have any, just before we go, do you have any, or do you have one that you could cling to and say, I'll put this forward? And that was my moment of 2019.
You mean a moment or a podcast? Remember, it's loud out here, Mike, so I might need some
It can either be a moment or a podcast or anything that made you say whoa in 2019. Just whilst you ponder that, I'm going to jump in then with mine. For me, one of the moments in 2019 that made me say whoa was Israel Adesanya. First of all, the walkout. The walkout slayed me. The best walkout I've ever seen. I know people were actually putting forward their walkout moments in terms of what was spectacular to them. But for me, Izzy coming out there, nailing that walkout, acrobatics, theatrics, then going out there and finishing Robert Whittaker in such devastating fashion, it made me, I just it blew my mind. It was nothing like it.
It's perfection. Yep. It was perfection. I don't want to take away from your moment, but I do want to speak of it.
Yeah.
I am someone that does not like the entertainment aspect of the UFC.
Really?
And I can tell you right now that walkout changed my whole world. I was like, if people can walk out like that, or actually take their time to choreograph it and make it nice like that, and then it was sentimental. Those were his friends. There was meaning behind it. I'm all for it. You won't hear me say shit or complain about that aspect of MMA if you're going to do it that well, like Israel Adesanya. And then after that, he beats Robert Whittaker like it was nothing. An incredible moment. Incredible. But for me, I'll just give a quick shout out to a podcast that I've been listening to kind of consistently, and that would be Juice's podcast, Fighting with Myself podcast. I think it's a really, really good podcast. It's hella long, Juice. You'd be killing me. But it's really, really good. And no, I keep it real. You know what I mean? It's hella long, but I think it's a really good podcast. And it's nice to have a podcast that I found on MMA Twitter to become part of my daily, routine, because I'm a podcast head. So shout out to you for making that a part of my life. And you guys need to check it out. So that's one of my 2019 favorite podcasts.
Like I say, we're going to be visiting this in depth probably on the first podcast back from our little break here, and that basically wraps up this episode, the last episode for 2019, the last episode of the decade. G, I just wanted to thank you in terms of moments of 2019. My moment would be having you come on board. You've actually changed the game. You've actually introduced an element which I think was lacking, and that is the interaction with the fans and basically making things more real and, enhancing the brand and allowing us, to make some trouble. So thank you for coming on board, and thank you for everything that you bring. Plus, representing at UFC events stateside. That is an angle which I've been wanting to have for a decade now, and it's beautiful to see that realized.
It's so funny you say that, because I did want to say that was my moment, but I didn't want to make it about me. But this year has been huge for this WHOACAST and adding me on, and just thank you so much and allowing me to be able to talk MMA with somebody else that loves it just as much as me. And finally I have a friend that I can talk to about MMA. So thank you, Mike, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to doing more things and talking even more with you. So
amazing.
I'm very happy here.
Nice.
And thank you.
Well, until next year, make some trouble.
That's right, always, Mike. Talk to you later.